Being 6 o'clock, we'll get this West Side Alders Public Safety meeting started. I'm Paul Skidmore. I'm the Alder from the 9th District. Welcome you all to this meeting. This is the second in a row, I believe, or third, that we've had that Alder McKinney started, and it's my turn to lead. And today's meeting is going to focus on some of the more serious crimes that we've been experiencing in the city, particularly the violence, the shooting, and the other types of violence that will come up. The purpose is to invite the West Side neighborhoods, the leaders in particular, to be a part of this so that we can hear what the Madison Police Department, West District, and Central or Midtown District rather, has to opine, and the information that they're going to share with us, and then there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I would like to introduce the alders that I know that are here. I see Alder Barbara Harrington McKinney, and I see Alder Christian Alders. I am not sure I see other alders here right now. I know that Alder Zach Hennick had planned to attend. If there are any other alders out there, I guess at this point I would like to just, Barb, maybe you can say hello, and maybe Christian, you can follow, and then after that, if any other alders are around, you can check in to let us know that you're here.
Thank you, Alder Skidmore. Good evening, and I'm Barbara Harrington McKinney, and I'm the Alder for District 1. And I've been asked about shaving my head, and so I'm very healthy. It has been challenging since I've been really at home since March to really keep upkeeping. So this is very freeing for me, and so I just wanted to put that out because I was asked about that. This is a great opportunity, and since I became an alder, this is really what I have been striving for, is that as a community, and when I say a community, the West District is not just the first district, it's a community. And the more we start coming together and having these conversations, the more that we can start getting solutions to what's facing us all. So good evening, and I'm very happy to be a part of this session tonight.
Thank you. Christian?
Yep, Alder Skidmore, thank you so much for putting this on with us, other West District alders. My name is Christian Alders, and I'm the District 20 alder. Geographically, I'm wedged in between Alder Hennick and Alder McKinney, so I have neighborhoods such as Meadowood, Greentree, and so I do see a number of residents from District 20 on here. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank the MPD and other city staff who are helping us facilitate this meeting. That said, it is a very much timely conversation. There's a lot of things going on. Unfortunately, there have been a number of shots fired and other violent crimes that have occurred in and around my district, and across the city and across the West Side. So I'm very much looking forward to the MPD providing some updates for residents. In particular, I'd like for the MPD to touch on how crimes of opportunity play a role within the violent crimes that we see as well. But with that said, I want to thank my alders for being here with me this evening. I want to thank you all for connecting this evening, and hope that this is a very productive conversation. That said, I'll give it back to you, Alder Skidmore.
Thank you. And I want to mention that at 6:04, we've reached our limit of participants. We found out that we have a limit of 100 participants on a Zoom meeting hosted, on a separate account like this. That's something that we hope we will correct by the next meeting. I know that because I just got a text from Captain Friedman from the Midtown District, who can't get on. We'll have to figure out a way to wedge him in here very soon. I will work on that from this end. But at this point, I'd like to thank everybody that's here. And I know that there's one individual from MPD that's here right now. And And Lieutenant Patterson, if you would be so kind as to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Alder Skidmore, I can come
Yes.
out and then I'll go on the phone. So that
Okay.
will the other captain to come in. So would you text him and let him know that we can exchange, because I can always dial in on the phone, because
Yep.
it's important for him to be a part of this conversation.
Yes, please do. Thanks.
Okay, sure. I'm leaving now and he can come in.
Okay.
Paul, would you like me to get off also?
Do you have an opportunity to get on by phone?
How do I do that? If you tell me how to do it, I'll do it.
Well, there should be a phone number at the on your link that if you want to get off and then just call back in.
Okay, I'll do that.
You know, it's on the email link. It's just like you can get on via Zoom or you can call in. That would
Okay.
be a alternative. Yes, thanks.
And Alder Skidmore, this is Christian. Put that in the message for everyone to see if there's any friends of theirs that aren't able to access, so that way they can have that phone number to share right away.
I will
Yeah.
get off and use a different method. So I'll get off.
Okay, and Alder Hannick just texted me to say that he can't get in either, so I'll text him. Thank you all. Reggie, are you out there? Can somebody unmute Reggie? There we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I am Reggie Patterson. I am the Lieutenant of Operations for the West District in Madison. I've been with MPD approximately 14 years, and I have been in the West District about 14 months now. And should I go ahead, Paul? I know the captain's about to log in. Or should I just go with some general?
Why don't you get started? I think other people are trying. Jason just said that he had no luck. I'll ask him to try again.
Okay. And if I were to reach back as far as July, we had 4 reported shots fired, and that's throughout the city. Common time of occurrence is 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., which is about standard. However, what we saw that's been different from the past is we had eight incidents of shots fired from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So we're seeing some broad daylight, very bold and brazen violence there. As of July, year to date, we had 143 shots fired. And just to put that in comparison, last year, 2019, we had 76. And that represents an 88.2% increase, which is just astronomical when it comes to the violence that we're seeing. And once again, that's citywide that we're seeing. As far as, and you know, if anyone has questions, but I'm just going to kind of go through the data that we have from the things that we're seeing the most. Of course, stolen autos. That's a big topic as well. Why? Because with these stolen autos, we're seeing stolen autos turn into the vehicles or the vessels that are taking part in a lot of these shots fired, a lot of armed robberies and stuff like that. So in 2020, and this was as of July, we're higher than this number now, 372 stolen autos. Last year at this time, 262. with a 42% increase. And once again, another astronomical, and even taking in account the recovered vehicles, 77 of them have been recovered.
He's trying, so should I just tell him to keep trying?
So, is Paul talking to the captain? But once again, the stolen autos is something that's been contributing to the other crimes that we're seeing, especially when it comes to violence. Another topic is that if they're not actually stealing the autos, they're stealing from the autos. And to date, and as of July 31st, 837 theft from autos. 5-year average is about 715. That's about 17% increase from what we're normally seeing. Interesting enough, Monday and Wednesday, just as I look at some of my figures here, are the most common days, not only for theft from autos, but from stolen autos as well. As far as calls for service, as I look at the top 25 addresses for calls for service, as far as the West District is concerned, 1250 McKenna would be number 5, and that's Elver Park area. The other address that we have that we only have 2 addresses in the top 10, that would be 7933 Tree Lane. So those 2 are in the top 10. Other than that, we go a ways before we go in mid-20s, late 30s. I'm sorry, late 20s, early 30s, before you see another West Side address. And once again, that's citywide. As far as more of the recent stuff, if I were to walk backwards from some of the most serious offenses, I think all of us have heard mostly about the 7,000 block of Colony Drive yesterday. There was a Ring video that captured a sedan driving down the 7,000 block of Colony and firing off multiple shots. We recovered 8 casings during that. Of course, that's under investigation as we speak. Crimes are unit working on that. If I were to go back even a couple days prior, August 24th, we have the 5900 block of Schrader where we had shots fired. And this shots fired was related to the homicide of Maurice Bowman. I think that we all recall from late July. And this was a dispute amongst family and friends as to arrangements, some personal matters as to how Bowman's estate and everything was being handled. During that incident, another reckless incident where multiple residences were struck that were occupied during this time. Luckily, no one was hurt as far as the innocent, the standby, but we had one victim who showed up at the hospital a little time later with a gunshot wound to the going back to August 22nd, there was calls of shots fired at Hammersley and Salsa. Do I pronounce that right? I always see that street name, and I always wondered if that's pronounced Salsa. I'm not from Madison, so can anyone confirm? But it's SAALSAA or something like that. But we don't have much information on that shots fired. We do know that multiple callers reported the incident. Back to August 21st, the Old National Bank robbery, which you may have seen information on the news, but with the suspect description, I'm not sure if they actually put that out. I haven't The vehicle that we believed was involved in that was recovered at the Home Depot on Verona Road. We have some leads. We are actively investigating that, and some potential suspects, we believe. No arrests to my knowledge up to this point. On August 17th, Gammon and Tree Lane received several reports of two vehicles pretty much playing cat and mouse, chasing one another, waving guns. We do know that one of those vehicles was stolen according to the license plate. We did not get any reports of shots fired, but we know that we received multiple calls, so there was something definitely behind that. Other than that, a property crime, but more of a brazen property crime, was August 17th. The Target on Junction Road was burglarized. There were actually employees in the store at the time. When the person forced entry, they must have cut themselves or injured themselves somehow, but they left blood on the scene. That is a case that's actively being worked with BCU, the Burglary Crime Unit, if I recall. And then two reports of shots fired on August 1st. There was a Leland and Balsam incident where 6 to 8 shots were fired. The Violent Crimes Unit were plugged in. The neighborhood officer, Lucas Hale, has a video. We have some people of interest, but not a lot of cooperation as to what happens. And of course, that's been one of the challenges that we've seen with a lot of these incidents, besides the reporting parties, but anyone that we believe that was involved and may have saw something, not really forthcoming with information. And then the other, as I go back to August 1st, is we had shots fired on the 5700 block of Russet, multiple shots. We did not find any casings, but we did receive multiple reports regarding that. And then, of course, I think it would be redundant to repeat we know Bowman homicide, and unfortunately, we know about the Dorchester homicide with Adriana Christensen, the 13-year-old. Between the Bowman homicide and Adriana took place within a 5-day time span, so definitely a stressful time. Any questions or concerns, or I'll do my best to answer. I was hoping the captain and someone with violent crimes would be on, but.
Yeah, this is Nicole. Hi.
How you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, how you doing? Thanks for all your details there. I just wanted to be on this call. It's very important to me. I live on Colony Drive, and it was super scary yesterday morning. And I would like to know, is there going to be more police patrolling the area now because of, the increased crime? I feel really concerned now, especially with it happening right at my house. I mean, when I heard the shots, I thought somebody was breaking in my house. That's how loud it was and how I didn't know what was happening. And so that's just a question that I have for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question, Nicole. And coming from the perspective of law enforcement, it really saddens me that in our own homes that we don't feel safe and our quality of life is greatly diminished. So I am very grateful for that aspect. As far as extra patrol, yes, ideally, that's what we would like to be doing in extra patrol. And based on calls for service, we're able to do so. However, with the pandemic and the protests that are happening right now, I'm downtown actually working CCB as far as security and guide security. We're having a lot of resources pulled away from, for example, CPT. The CPT teams are being used for either strike teams to assist at the Capitol for protests or part of a COVID response team that we had to create, of course, in lieu of the pandemic. And right now, we're have staffing holds. We're in mandatory 12-hour shifts. And a week like this, or when the protest heightens, we're in a awkward position of playing a little bit of defense, if you will, where it takes away from our proactive patrol, which is very frustrating because that's something that we pride ourselves in. But, you know, it's an unprecedented time right now, and it's very difficult to get those extras. And I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And I just want to say also that we really appreciate all the hard work that the police do every day and putting your lives on the line for us. We do appreciate all the hard work and all the response. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And I can never hear too much. Anyone who has support for us, it's great to hear. We know you're out there. We know you support us, but it's always great to hear it.
Yeah, this is Carrie Ludke. I live on the backside of Garner Park. And
Yes, ma'am.
that was quite a horrible situation that happened at Garner Park with two factions having a shootout, right? That's what
Correct.
happened.
Correct.
And again, I just want to voice my support for the police, because when my husband called, he said, send the police. And they said they're on their way. And my husband said, send them all. Right. So we really appreciate it. And we have been afraid. Right. I think there, you know, a lot of unrest in Madison, but we do support the police. And it's a tough situation. And I admire your bravery during this time. But many of us support you.
Thank you. An interesting thing about the Garner incident goes back to Nicole's question as well. We were working the protests and had several resources allocated to work in the protests, the strike teams, the traffic teams, and so forth. But when we got information that people were gathering in Garner, we had already started heading there in advance just to, you know, make sure things were peaceful. And as we got close, we actually received the call moments before the officers were pulled up, which, thank goodness, probably saved some lives. And we were able to, you know, do the best we could to try to control the situation and make peace. But that was pretty bold and brazen, and that was a pretty violent act.
I just want to say that there's many a party that has happened at Garner Park, and for the people that are listening, you know, we've had many different groups up there, friendly, but that situation was raising the hair on my arm. Like, just whatever was happening there was very frightening. And I think we, you know, the neighbors, all of us called in noise complaints. And I just want to tell people that if their senses are telling them that something is wrong and it's different, I applaud all of my neighbors. There were several of us who called in noise complaints because it just felt so different.
May I ask a question? I'm Liz Spencer. I'm the president of the Walnut Grove Homes Association.
Yeah, one second,
hi,
Liz.
nice
I
to
just
see
want to say, just one real quick question.
Yeah.
There are a couple of people who do want to speak. So after, if you do want to speak, I'll be muting everyone and kind of doing it in order. I know Joseph Christopher wants to speak, so he will be after Liz, and I kind of want to set up a structure so everyone can get a chance to speak as well. So thank you so
How do
much.
you do this?
Thank you. I wanted to ask, so this has been this, I'm going to unmute myself if that's okay. So this has been the second shooting that I'm aware of that has happened off of Colony Drive. So there's the one that just happened, and then a few years ago, before I moved into the neighborhood, there was one on Colony Circle where a resident in our neighborhood was actually shot through their home. I am under the impression, which might not be a correct statement, that none of the people involved in the shooting are actually residents of our neighborhood. I do not know if that's true or not. But I think I'm most curious at this point, like I don't think necessarily more patrols is the answer, because you can't be everywhere at once. I'm curious from like the city's alderman's perspective, like what the city is looking to do in terms of different programs, education, like from what we've heard, I don't know if this is true, there's a lot of people who are younger who are doing these crimes. And I think a lot of people in the current climate are feeling like there's opportunity for other programs or education rather than patrols and arrests. And I'm just curious if the city is planning on organizing or working on anything in that regard.
Ma'am, was your inquiry pointed to all of the alders or any specific alder, or if Alder McKinney wants to talk or Alder Skidmore?
Sorry, I remuted myself. It would be to all the alders, anyone who's aware of what's happening in city council meetings or working with the mayor in any way. I think the police are doing a great job at what they're doing, but I think this can't be on them.
If any of my colleagues want to go first, they can. Otherwise, I can respond.
Why don't you make a comment, and then this is Paul. I'll make a comment after you. So.
Okay, thank you, Alder Skidmore. Yeah, well, thank you so much for the question. I think that your question raises a good point, is that there's systemic issues and we have to look at public safety from a holistic lens. That said, I think that the lies in a number of other things, such as like good housing, good access to food, strong and healthy families, strong and healthy neighborhoods, employment opportunities, and things along those lines that create economic and personal empowerment. That said, I have been speaking to folks that I know personally on a personal level to try and find unique opportunities to provide economic and job opportunities to youth in our community, as well as to folks in our community that need that. So I know that from my perspective that I'm having those conversations as we speak, and I've been having them in the past as well. But I also know that the council does support a lot of community services that do offer that sort of capacity building already. But with that said, I think it's very timely to continue to look for new opportunities that really do engage that. So thank you for the question.
Can I talk? I don't know how you get in here to talk.
Oh, yeah, so if you raise your hand, right now we have, after Alder Skidmore makes a comment, we have Joseph Cristoforo who wants to speak. He's been waiting for a while.
Hi, this is Alder Skidmore talking here. So I apologize. It's been a little bit frantic. Just so all of you who can hear me know that within just a couple of minutes, we met our capacity for this room. This meeting, we didn't realize that there was 100 capacity, and we have people in the waiting room. So there's a lot of people I can't get on, including Alder Hennick, Captain Friedman, and Sergeant Messer from the police department. So this is a good problem, and I apologize for that. But to address the question that was just posed for right now, if you know me, I think you know where my heart is, and it's with the Madison Police Department. And I am currently working on a resolution to be introduced at the council on Tuesday, which would condemn the violence in the name of peaceful protest, and to condemn the acts of discrimination and racism. They're both reprehensible and illegal, and they should be stopped. And I am working on a resolution to show support from the council and the mayor, hopefully, that would condemn violence of any form, and that ask and empower the police department to end the threats that we are facing. This is a multifaceted problem, and it's not just the violence, but that's at the extreme end, but it can produce the harm that we've seen in the loss of life, loss of property, and fear within our neighborhoods. We also have to address the acts of racism and the acts of discrimination, which are also reprehensible. It's not an either or, it's a both and. We have to address all of it. So we will be looking at something, there will be a number of items that will be brought up, but it's not soup yet. So thank you for the question. And I just got a note that Captain Friedman is on the meeting at this point, and hopefully he'll be able to speak. Kwesi, is he available?
If he can raise his hand so he can move up to the top and I can ask him to unmute. He should be. I clicked his name to get him to join. I hope he made it on there.
Paul, just so you know.
Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
Oh.
I don't know where I am on anybody's screen, but this is like Brady's Bunch on steroids from my view. So, no, thank you. Glad to be here. I've obviously missed the first chunk of the meeting. So Paul or if one of the other alders has something specific they would like me to comment on, or if I'm just here to try to do my best to answer questions along with, I see Lieutenant Patterson is here as well. We'll do our best to represent the Midtown and West Police Districts.
Well, Captain, this is Paul. Thank you very much for coming on. You did miss Lieutenant Patterson's presentation where he talked about some specifics as well as generalities as to the violent crime. But in your capacity as the captain and having worked in the command center very regularly, you know, if you want to comment on the violent crime that we've been experiencing, particularly the shots fired during the day, the feeling on the street, and there has been particular discussion about the incident at Garner Park the other night. So we've covered a variety of topics, but everything is still important and fresh.
Very good. So I'll run through some statistics, and Garner Park was on my list to talk about a little bit as well. And then again, to not be repetitive and to allow for questions, I probably won't go too much farther than that. So as Reggie probably already said, we've had record numbers of shots fired throughout the city. That is a trend that we have seen in the Midtown Police District. One example of that is in 2019 in July, we had 1 shot fired, and in 2020 we've had 7. So that's just in the Midtown District, and overall we've had something along the lines of an 88% increase in shots fired from July of last year to July of this year, and we are on record paces for that. Over the last 4 years, Midtown, we've seen an increase in robberies. Our 3-year average before 2020 was around 3, and we've had 6 in July of 2020 versus 4, 3, and 1 for the last 3 Julys. And overall, that's a 21% increase citywide in robberies from 2019 to 2020. Significant increases in stolen autos. We've about doubled our July total from 2019. We had 10, and in 2020 we've had 19. So that's sort of a pretty dry statistics, but I will talk briefly about 2 incidents which in my 23-year career I would both consider to be unique and extraordinary, that they happened not only in the same geographic district, the Midtown district, but they also happened within a few weeks of each other in the same year. The first, which you didn't mention, Paul, was the hostage situation that happened at 755 Braxton Place. That was a week or 2 before the Garner incident. Officers were dispatched to the Braxton area for a domestic. When they showed up, they found something that's literally out of our training manual. You had a male holding a female with a knife to her throat. They had had a violent domestic encounter, and they had a domestic relationship. Those situations are extremely volatile. At a minimum, we would later find out that it was a suspect's intention to to try to create a suicide by cop to get the police officers to shoot him. And in this case, instead of directly threatening the police officers, he was threatening his ex-girlfriend. The officers used extraordinary teamwork, training, as well as both the 40 millimeter less lethal launcher, as well as multiple uses of the taser, the ECD, and were able to gain compliance and take this person into custody without having to utilize deadly force. But for those non-lethal options, this would have been a completely justified and almost required use of deadly force given the circumstances. And the officers took on additional risk to themselves in order to try to avoid having to use deadly force. And you know, again, I've been on 23 years. I've been on the SWAT team for most of my career. I trained a lot for that type of situation, never saw it, and really hadn't seen it at all in our jurisdiction. And then to have it happen, you know, over what's been the most violent and challenging summer that anyone in living memory at the police department's experience was quite a significant event. And then just a few weeks after that, or days after that, I've lost track now, we have the Garner Park incident, where we have essentially a mass shooting, which thankfully didn't result in a significant injury and no loss of life. There were some people who received some minor injuries, but again, our officers went into the danger. They could see the gunfight happening. They didn't stand back. They didn't wait and see. They went into that park and tried to do their job, stabilize the situation, take and maintain control. They were met with a lot of hostility, even in the midst of a shootout, but they remained professional and were able to, again, bring some order to that chaos, and recovered multiple casings, clearly multiple firearms being used, including an AK-47, which is a high-powered assault rifle. It's a more powerful weapon than what we carry, either in patrol or on SWAT. And to my knowledge, none of the shooters in that, the primary aggressors, have been identified or arrested. And I don't know what the status of that is, but unfortunately, those individuals are still at large. So it's been a very challenging summer for us on a number of different layers, COVID being the first, the protests being the second, and of course those have flared, as Alder Skidmore mentioned. It's been a lot of our weeks since Sunday, and then we also have the record-setting levels of gun violence that we're dealing with, and some really extraordinary situations that, as somebody who grew up in Madison and has been here my entire adult life as a police officer, you know, some of these calls would have been once in a career calls, and to see them stack up, and I'm not even, you know, talking about the tragic murder of Anissa, those sorts of things to happen all at once is, it's incredible and very concerning for me as a, you know, as somebody who grew up here, as a father, as a police officer. It's been very challenging for my folks and for our officers, as well as I'm sure for many of you. So,
Alder Skidmore, this is Christian. Would you mind if I asked the captain a question?
Please do.
Captain Freeman, thank you so much for being here. This is Christian Alboris, the Alder from District 20. Fortunately, I get to work very closely with Captain Patton, and unfortunately, he's not here this evening. That said, him and I have a number of discussions regarding the increase in violent crimes that have occurred, as well as property crimes, et cetera, not only here in District 20, but on the near west side and across the city as well. With that said, it seems like a really common thread ends up happening with some of these crimes, like for instance, with the stolen vehicle, and in ways in which folks are getting access to those stolen vehicles, and how at times the stolen vehicle is an element that creates a bigger public safety issue with high-speed chases or shootings that are occurring. But one thread that's there sometimes is that the stolen vehicle was acquired through a crime of opportunity. So I don't know if you could speak to how the crime of opportunity is playing into some of the more violent crimes that we're seeing, and what are some things that we as neighbors can do to be more mindful around that?
Oh, yes, I think that's a great question, and I want to parse it a little bit at the front end. That it's interesting. I had a similar conversation earlier today with Orchard Ridge, someone from Orchard Ridge, and it's what's on a lot of people's minds. And first and foremost, we want to try to limit the opportunities for some of these crimes to happen, but at the same time, I don't want to shame the victims, or it's certainly not because I left my car running. I am not responsible for that being stolen. That's still the criminal deliberate behavior of somebody else. But if I can make it harder for that person to do it, maybe I help to avoid some of those bad choices that person is intent on making. So I think it's important to see there's a commission and an omission sort of a portion to this, but I absolutely encourage, support, beg, request that people, take a number of precautions that I wish we didn't have to, but I think will really make people safer, the community safer, and try perhaps to mitigate some of these opportunistic crimes. So it runs a gamut. Keep your doors locked, keep your car locked. Don't leave your keys in your car. Don't leave your garage door opener in your car if your car is parked out on the street. Don't leave your garage door open, even during the day. If you have to leave it open for access or whatnot, make sure that the door between your garage and your house is locked. If somebody comes to your door and you don't know them, don't open the door. You don't have to call 911 right away, but you also don't have to engage with somebody if you don't know them, don't recognize them, or you feel uncomfortable for some reason. Think about lighting, think about, storing your valuables out of sight. There are a whole bunch of things that we can do that will help to harden our homes, our cars. Not a guarantee, because somebody can still force their way into a car, into a house, can still defeat, the best locks, but typically people look for easier rather than harder. And to the extent that we can make things harder, I think we can, again, mitigate some of those opportunistic crimes.
Thank you, Captain.
Okay. We have Joseph Cristoforo, who's been waiting for a while. I'll ask him to unmute himself.
Yeah, hello. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, sir.
Quasi, you got me, Quasi?
Yes, we got you. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to direct a couple of comments and a question or two towards Captain Friedman and Lieutenant Patterson. We live in the Blackhawk section, and we were victims of a break-in last July 2019, had 2 cars stolen in the process, as well as some personal effects. And I don't really want to discuss that in depth, but my sense in speaking with law enforcement who responded very well to our concerns is that at that point in time, there seemed to be a significant shortage of police in the MPD. Is that still the case? And if it is, could you address on this forum, or you're comfortable addressing in this forum, how many more police do you really feel you need in the field to adequately police?
Reggie, do you want me to take the first kick, or do you want that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'm sorry that you had suffered that incident. And so I appreciate your bringing it up. So we're, again, under the best of circumstances, there's a lot of things we would do as a police agency. We would deploy our resources that we do have to try to be as proactive as possible, try to identify our thieves and burglars, deal with them in a variety of ways, some of which are, very traditional, making arrests, looking for them, and others are less traditional. Maybe we're working with families, neighborhood organizations, other entities that are trying to do intervention or diversion. Unfortunately, what we're addressing right now, even if we take the whole staffing issue off the table, it's where are the resources we currently have, where are they being allocated, and how are they being allocated? And so COVID, and again, none of us, can control COVID, but COVID has altered the way we police, and because of cleaning protocols and equipment requirements and distancing requirements, it's made just our day-to-day work a little harder and a little more challenging. And it means we can't do some of the things we would normally do, which directly or indirectly, I think, would have a positive impact on some of these opportunistic crimes, some of these property crimes, and even some of the more violent crimes that we've talked about tonight. Well, then the next layer of that onion, so to speak, are the protests. And that's what's really drawn away our resources over the summer, which is, again, in the best of times, is always our busiest time historically in the city. Gets hot, and we tend to see more violence, more gun crime, period. And beyond the extremely violent riots that we've seen, unfortunately, we had a flare-up earlier this week. We saw it in late June. We saw it in early June. Those have clearly and understandably created a lot of headlines and a lot of concern. And there's been a lot of looks at those, and that required a lot of officers working. But when those fires, those literal or figurative fires, sort of calm down, we haven't been able to disengage entirely. And so for virtually the entire summer, we've had a lot of the units that would normally be out in the neighborhoods, out in the streets, doing traffic, doing foot patrol, doing enforcement of trespassing, doing drug interdiction. All of those units have been, because they're not typical patrol reactive services, all of those units have been working these ongoing protests. They've been doing traffic control. They've been ensuring that, people engaged in peaceful activity aren't going to get run over. They're monitoring behavior to make sure it doesn't become criminal. They're able to respond if there's a threat as a result of one of these events. And so, and that's not just from an officer level, it's also, supervisors, lieutenants, and captains have all had, significant chunks of their time allocated to the protests. And then we have the next layer, the violence, which then what capacity we do have, either in patrol or when we do have opportunities to pull some of our proactive units like the gang unit, like the drug unit. When we do have those resources, which we did for several weeks between the major flare-ups of violence, they're dealing with the homicides, the attempted homicides, the violent crime. And so it's a long way of getting around to, under the current circumstances, it's going to be very difficult for us to deal with those things. If some of those layers were removed, I think we'd be a lot more effective and we'd be able to do a lot more. And, I've certainly been around long enough to realize that at least part of it's supply and demand. I'd love to have more officers, but if some of the demands being put on our officers could be mitigated, that would also have a really positive effect. And I think that's, in the short term, that's more realistic than expecting a large increase in staff.
Well, I won't push this issue at all, but, as a victim, and I don't know how many other victims are on this Zoom call, I'm going to say my piece. So I'm going to appreciate you hearing me out here, okay? And this is for the alders on board who go back to the city council. As of last July, when we were robbed, okay, I was told there was a significant shortage of officers. This is pre-COVID, pre-rioting and protesting. And if there was a significant shortage of officers at that point in time, my educated guess is that shortage still exists. So I think it's incumbent upon the alders and the city council to revisit the hiring of more officers. And then I think it's incumbent on the citizens to insist that the elected officials back up the police and back up the work of the police. And it's fairly common knowledge that there's members of the judicial system in Madison who do not back up the police. And I think that's abhorrible. And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it with my name attached to it. So I'm going to sign off. God bless you. God bless Lieutenant Patterson, because I know you guys walk out of the house every day and your loved ones don't know if you're going to come home, and you don't get credit for that. So I really think if we're going to talk about a community effort, we can all Zoom all we want and talk about it. But if the people who are in the decision-making positions aren't on board and don't see what's happening and don't stop making excuses for why it's happening, it's just going to get worse, and you're going to have one bad outcome after another. And that started a week or two ago in Cross Plains, where, you know, gunshots were exchanged between a homeowner who was broken into and the people who broke into him. It's going to happen. I transplanted from New York 4 years ago. So I come from an area where this is not uncommon, and it's hit Madison, Wisconsin. And guess what? It's not going to stop, folks. So you all need to kind of need to wake up and support the police, and these elected officials need to support the police. I've said enough, but I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I just want to make a quick announcement that Captain Patton is at the command post and Sergeant Mesa is on the street, so neither will be joining us tonight. But next we have Antoinette. I will ask her to unmute, calling from her iPad.
Yeah, this is actually Martin. This is her husband. I want to applaud the job that the police are doing. And I echo the comments of the gentleman who was just speaking. I mean, making ridiculous, assumptions like Des Moines, Iowa, and some other cities have done. They're now gang central because they took the soft pedal approach to absolutely everything. So what I would like to know, I just spent a few $1,000s upgrading the security around my house because there's been pretty much a break-in, car theft, something pretty much every night for the last 6 months within 1 mile to 2 miles of our house. I'd like to know if the city has any budget for putting up cameras, because especially in a lot of the neighborhoods, there's choke points going in and out, and they can at least get video of the license plate with the correct lighting. They can get video of the individuals involved. I'm curious about what happened with a 13-year-old who was involved with the head-on Glenway a few weeks ago, where a dozen garage door openers, car keys, wallets, and other things were found in the car. Whatever happened with the driver in that incident? Was he arrested? I'd like to know what they're doing, and I'm really sick of everybody making excuses for these little delinquents who are just making a career out of it, especially in Madison, because I can get away with, they're just going to slap me on the wrist and turn me loose before dinner time. I'm getting really tired of it. So what can we do as far as, I would like to know if there's some vehicle that the police have, if there's a break-in in the area. Pretty much everybody I know has put up cameras in the last year to 2 years. We can get, pictures. We at least have a timeline. We may be able to get license numbers. When these little idiots show up at the door and someone knocks on the door and somebody else is breaking into their garage, we need a vehicle to send that footage to the police to build cases. I'd also like to see forensics done with a lot of these, because my understanding is forensics is not being done on a lot of these break-in cases, either because of resources or whatever. So when they've committed their 50th crime, you can pile the charges on so they're actually charged as an adult, rather than charge them with one and turn them loose on the street again to further their career.
Is it my turn to talk?
We have Elizabeth Hendrickson next, and then PJ, and then we'll and then you, Mary.
So nobody is going to comment on what I just said?
I don't know if any of the alders want to address the concerns about surveillance, and I'm not sure the status of the investigation with a head-on collision.
Well, this is Paul Skidmore, Alder of the 9th, and Alder McKinney and I had a conversation a while back with the juvenile judge court commissioner and some of the juvenile judges, and it was very frustrating then, and it's getting worse now. The problems that we talked about then have gotten much worse. There's much recidivism. I can't pronounce that word, but repeat offenders, and that there were stories a couple years ago about juveniles that would steal a car and had the cell phone of the juvenile judge that they'd be facing when they were arraigned, and they knew they'd be on the street within a half an hour. There are a lot of issues surrounding those problems. Some of them that were expressed to us was that there was a reluctance to send any of the juvenile offenders to Lincoln Hills or the other facilities, that the county had is not supporting the halfway houses and the local facilities. So there was a lot of finger pointing as to why they couldn't do anything. But long story short, you know, the problem is getting better, or not better. It's not getting better. It's getting worse, and that these problems still continue. And I see now that the county has just backed out of the agreement to build more facilities within the county, which puts a lot more things at peril. Alder McKinney, could you comment more on the juvenile recidivism? Barbara, you out there?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she was able to make it in. I'll try to see if I can get her on, but until then, we can get if we can get Elizabeth Hendrickson.
Yes, hello. I am a resident of the Elver Park neighborhood, and I work in the Meadowood neighborhood. And I did want to just mention that it is interesting to see the contrast in individuals' perceived responses from the police between an incident where they said that they felt unsafe, and also an incident that I worked with Captain Petton and Alder Abruzio on, where two individuals were walking around our neighborhood with assault rifles, with the same assault rifles that you were mentioning that these individuals at Garner Park had. We were met with one police officer, and we were met with very little response. We were told that there was nothing that could be done, and the individuals were free to walk around the neighborhood with their assault rifles and intimidate individuals. So I just wanted to mention that when you say that you have a lack of cooperation among individuals in the Meadowood neighborhood, among individuals in the Balsam Raymond Russet neighborhood, that type of response speaks volumes. When someone in a wealthier neighborhood, when someone in a neighborhood where perhaps they own their home rather than renting, feels that they can call the police when they have a quote unquote feeling, and they will get an immediate response with multiple officers, versus when someone calls when there is a direct threat in front of them and they get a response that takes approximately 10 minutes with one officer, that says to a neighborhood that your matter is a lot different. And so I just wanted to bring that up and point that out, that we do need to look at how we are responding to these neighborhoods. And I understand that people are frustrated and people are upset, but these are human beings, and it is definitely felt within the neighborhoods, these disparities and these actions and these thoughts and feelings that are being said right now.
Human beings. Right there, we got a problem.
Thank you so much. Next, we have PJ, and then Dave and Beth. Is PJ still here? Okay, then Dave and Beth.
Thank you. I have a question about grassroots organizations in this area. I'm a board member of the Mellowhood Foundation, and so this question is directed to the police and also the Alders. I'm wondering how that's going. I am fairly aware of with Mellowhood, but are there other grassroots organizations who've been able to be helpful because of the trust that hopefully they've developed with the community?
I can speak to that right away if you'd like, Alder Skidmore or the MPD.
Please do. That is not my my area over there, so I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak globally to grassroots organizations in that even in my conversations with Captain Patton, he says that having partnerships with the community, including grassroots organizations that have strong ties to the community, allows them to facilitate their job of public safety and policing so much better and more effectively. With that said, I know that city resources are going to organizations like the ones you've mentioned. I know Road Home is another grassroots organization that we have within the Meadowood neighborhood. We also have a community partnership that's led by Sheree Wallace that looks at health disparities in terms of, just general physical health outcomes, mental health outcomes, and things of that nature. And I know that she's very much in partnership with the local neighborhood officers and the MPD. I believe even Lieutenant Patterson interfaces with her frequently, and Captain Patton, as well as the Meadowood Neighborhood Association, who's also members of that board are on this call as well, where they are nonprofit organizations but are grassroots in nature and seek to create partnerships among neighbors and create neighborly connections, and also partner with community service providers as well as law enforcement to ensure that we're creating a safe neighborhood and district. With that said, I know that city resources are funneled to these organizations to support their cause and capacity. And I would always be willing to learn more about other organizations or find other ways in which we can support that.
And so I would simply say that for those of you that are on this call, if you're interested in joining a grassroots organization, to please consider it. If you know people, you have friends, family members, grassroots organizations are really important. It's a reason that I got involved with it. I know that the police are understaffed, and these kinds of opportunities, grassroots opportunities to really get to know the neighborhoods and the people that are there are really critical.
Thank you so much. Now we have Mary Lee Pickett.
Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted before. I wasn't sure I was on the right queue. I have some real concerns with what's going on in Madison. Not with the police. Thank you, Lieutenant Patterson and Friedman, for being here. I really value what you do and how you try to keep us safe. Some real concerns with city government. By the way, thank you, Alders Skidmore. I know you've always been a champion of moderation. But I'm afraid we're going to, we have all these different committees and projects, and while I applaud your grassroots effort, the person who just spoke before, it seems to me like, I don't know if we need another youth program. I mean, if we counted up all the programs and the not-for-profits that we fund, I think we've probably got quite a few of those. I would suggest that for city government, whenever you fund programs, whether it's Freedom Inc. or whatever, people need to be held accountable with outcome data. Not outputs, but data. What are they doing that is really making a difference? And if not, they shouldn't be funded. I did appreciate too, Alder Skidmore, your comments about, I'm paraphrasing you, but that Madison should be able to walk, chew gum, and juggle at the same time. I feel we haven't been doing that. The narrative gets like, if you are supportive of the police, at the very worst, you're a racist. At the very best, maybe you're insensitive. So you can't, it's like we have to do 3 or 4 things at one time. You can support the police, you can be outraged at the terrible behavior that has happened by police with people of color. You can be concerned about racism and strive to overcome that. But I think that it's a lot of things taken together. And I'm hearing more from public leaders that with the violence, we have to get to the root causes. Well, I read research. We don't know what all the root causes are. The narrative is one thing, but if you look at all the research. There's a lot of causes, and I'm afraid that this city tends to only look at a very narrow focus. And I don't see how we're going to get out of this situation. I do have a couple of questions. One, Lieutenant Patterson commented about the top 10 places. There was one place on McKenna Road, and there's one place on Colony Drive. And so one of my questions is there anything that can be done proactively? You know where these places are. I realize we have a constitution within which we must operate, but that's one question. And then my second question, and it's radical, but when you hear about these 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds out at 1 in the morning stealing cars, where are the parents? Is there any kind of accountability? I mean, these are minors. My gosh. I think of my granddaughter at her age going out at 1 in the morning and stealing cars. It just wouldn't happen. So thank you for your time. Sorry I talked too much.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Just to address, I mentioned that 1250 McKenna was one of the addresses as far as the West District for calls for service. That is not necessarily a bad thing, because when you have a park, say, like Elver, a lot of those calls, a majority of those calls is if someone gets hurt, if someone gets injured, check person, check property. Most of those calls are very low-level calls. It's a park, very highly populated. A lot of people come to and from and ask for a lot of assistance. So as far as the McKenna address, it's predominantly lower key stuff, but of course, those are in the numbers for calls for service. The other address that we had that was of high call volume was the 7933 Tree Lane. They have been under nuisance abatement for some time, and that a property who in the beginning really high significant calls for service. It has reduced dramatically, although there's still some work to be done. It's leveling off, but we are working with Sankofa, the social services agency, and the management company to continue to work and calm the call service and provide services to everyone who needs them. And we meet every other week to discuss how we can make everything head in the right direction.
Next we have Leslie. Is Leslie available?
Yes, hi. This is actually her husband, PJ. You had called on me earlier.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And it dropped off, so I apologize. I just wanted to speak up and say, you know, we actually have been victims twice now of the burglaries. I guess fortunately, the first time it happened was last summer, maybe before they got sophisticated, and my car was broken into, and they took my garage door opener, but fortunately did not enter the house. We had moved from that neighborhood, and then within about a month of living in the new neighborhood off Old South where we live, we went out one morning and found our garage door forcibly lifted. So we had taken all the instructions to heart that the police officer that came out gave to us. We locked our doors. We made sure that everything was closed, and the violence escalated to the point where someone tried to enter my garage door that was closed. We had called the police and wanted to report this, and because they had said nothing was stolen, that they didn't even want to come out and assess the situation or look at the situation. So, you know, my fear is that no matter, you know, you can keep telling us to please lock everything, try to limit the number of opportunities, but in my own experience, I've seen the violence escalate in the last year, and I think it's only going to continue to escalate. And I think as we continue to let younger children away with this, there's no incentive for them to change their behavior. I work in behavioral change. That's that's my area of expertise. And without any incentive to change your behavior, you will never change your behavior, and you will continue to escalate. So we can remove all of the low-hanging fruit and say, well, we're going to make it harder so that people can't, steal cars or get into unlocked cars, but it's going to escalate. They're going to break in, and then they're going to steal the car, and they're going to run into folks, and there's going to be even an escalation of violence. So, I'm very disheartened in hearing that there's very little effort to want to hold anyone accountable for fear that we're being too harsh on young people. I have, what I can tell you is, in my experience and what I see happening is property values are going to go down. People are going to flee the area, and all of the positives of the Madison community, the schools, the livelihood, people are not going to want that anymore. And I think we're at the very beginning of that. I fear that without strong change to help people modify their behaviors, that we are just looking at the beginning of the end of the community that we have at this moment. I just wanted to share my experiences because I feel like, everything that we're being told to do, you can do, and it still doesn't work. So what I don't want to have to do is come back here in another year or 2 years from now, or probably I won't live in this community anymore at that point. Hopefully I'll be able to exit the community before my property value plummets, and look back and say, I got out of Madison before it got worse, because I saw the change coming and nobody was willing to give any incentive for behavioral change. So I'll open this up to anybody who wants to comment, anybody that wants to address how to change behavior. There is no incentive for them to do anything different. There is no incentive. Why would you change? So I'll open it up. Anyone can answer. I'm happy for your feedback. Thank you.
Alder Skidmore, do you want to say something? Or I know you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I want to, I have some statements to make, but not to address this in particular, so I'll defer to others at this point. Well, possibly I could make some comments.
The silence is very disheartening that nobody wants to respond to my statement.
I think
I will.
We have a cap.
Yeah, I wanted to just open it up if any of the non-law enforcement, I didn't want to step on them, but one of the reasons I got into this job was because of public safety and the need to hold people accountable and the rule of law. And I deeply respect what the gentleman said, and I happen to agree with it, that it's a significant challenge for us right now. And it's certainly frustrating for my officers and I, because we're just one link in a larger chain, and we can do everything right. And, there are other entities that have, look at things differently or have different priorities. And we get a lot of instances where there isn't a lot of accountability. And I don't have a background in behavioral science, but my experience as a police officer is that small behaviors that aren't corrected sufficiently lead often to larger behaviors. So small crimes lead to larger crimes without some kind of interruption. And that I think that's uncontrovertible since human civilization began. So I've seen in my 23 years here, we have added a lot of very valuable programs, diversion, working with youth, different academies, and those are great. And I don't disparage them at all, but that's one side of the coin. And if the other side of the coin doesn't have the stick, so you have the carrot and you have the stick, if both of those aren't working in tandem, it's going to create some real problems. And unfortunately, he's also right that what we have is we do have some, and it's tragic, some very young people who are becoming far more violent, far earlier, far more aggressive, far harder. I mean, again, 20 years ago, I wasn't seeing this. They were much older, fewer, less frequent. So it is disturbing, and you know, it's a complicated issue, you know, to solve it. But I do take my hat off to the sort of trying to figure out what the problem is. It's just trying to figure out what the solutions that are, because there's certainly a lot of thumbs in that pie that need to work together in order to get to that point of positive outcomes, actual accountability, as well as opportunities to change or to get better. So thank you.
If I could just follow up and just say one thing, you know, when I work with people with behavioral change, the things I like to try to put in front of them are scenarios that would cause a change in behavior. So I think if we go to whoever the powers are that be that are choosing not to allow for accountability, I think we need to ask them, what would it take for you to hold people accountable? Would it take a death? Would it take the death of a child? Would it take, you know, the loss of property values? Would it take a decrease in schooling? I mean, or the quality of schools, a drop in the economy? I mean, I'd like to know what their threshold is to make a change, because continuing on in the same path that we're continuing on, just in the span of a year has personally shown that it's not working. Something has to change, or else what I'm being told is I just need to leave. I have 2 small children under 6, and you're telling me I can't leave my garage door open so that they can play in my driveway and ride their bikes around in my driveway. I have a gentleman in my neighborhood with mental health issues who speeds up and down the street at 40 to 50 miles an hour and we've called the police twice. We're told that that's not a high enough level of issue. So my kids can't play in the street. They can't play in my driveway. I can't leave my garage door open. I mean, what are we doing here? Why am I still here? Why am I still here? I would love to know what the scenario would be that people would make a change.
Alder Skidmore, do you mind if I chimed in on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I guess I can respond in saying that in my aldermanic duties thus far, I've talked to a number of folks who have identified this issue where they're seeing certain behaviors and where there isn't any sort of recourse for it. Like, for example, I know that I had the opportunity of speaking to the former director of the library here in Meadowood, and where, say for instance, an individual was creating some issues there and possibly doing things that were obviously not welcome by library staff, or creating a conducive learning environment in the library. And then that individual would be seen next day or a couple of days later. And I've heard that from for instance, library staff. I've heard it from folks from nonprofit organizations. And even myself and Alder McKinney have tried learning more about what's going on, that this is occurring. And so we've talked with, even a local judge and also with MPD staff about this situation occurring with stolen vehicles. So I'm very much wanting to learn more about this issue. And there's another member of the community that I served on another committee with, who was in law enforcement and worked at the local school district as well, and saw that some of the youth had progressed in terms of things that were occurring when there wasn't good redirection or giving them resources to change behavior and sort of find more, success and opportunities with their education and other features. So I definitely want to say that I've heard this theme and this issue before, and do seek to want to learn more and figure out ways in which we can have redirection occur, and make sure that we're creating spaces that are needed. But also, I think Alder Skidmore had mentioned too, that some of these opportunities for alternatives are, we're seeing that those resources maybe aren't there with the county and et cetera. So I do want to acknowledge that I've heard this and I'm looking to learn more about it and find resolutions for it.
Can I speak once and answer Leslie? This is Tom. First of all, I want to thank the police officers that are on the line here. You folks have done a fabulous job, and there's a lot of unfair criticism aimed at all of you, and I really appreciate what you have done. I think when we want to change behavior, though, we're going about it the wrong way. The question was raised before, where are mom and dad? Well, I think a lot of the home life here, probably isn't in good shape. And so mom and dad may not be able to change the behavior. We look at the schools, and we've gone and started to take police out of schools. When we have the police in the school, that gives them an ear to the students, but it also allows them to find out the needs and what's driving these kids, etc. But now we've taken them out. We've had riots that are saying defund the police. And we're asking for more police to come by our neighborhoods and watch this. You're not going to change behavior of these kids until we have to bring in some more police or have some more repercussions of what they're doing. And, I asked the alderman on this phone call, you've got to look at this. I've heard that for the isthmus, for example, all the things that are going on there at any one time, there's not more than 8 police officers. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, they can't handle all that. And now when you throw in the riots and everything else, to have patrols on the west side of Madison is just not going to happen. And so these kids are getting free reign of whatever they want to do. And just while I've got it on here, I think that the camera idea, and somebody put on here that you can register cameras with the city of Madison. I think we ought to know more about that and really promote the heck out of that. And I'd like to ask the officers as well, these neighborhood watches that we used to see a lot of, is that something that might work or deter?
Wendy, I hope you're out there. Wendy Reichel is just the phenom when it comes to neighborhood officers. She works with Tyler Grigg of our core team and so forth. But yes, Wendy, out there, can you speak on that?
I'm out here, Reggie. Yeah, the MPD's neighborhood safety program is called the Good Neighbor Project, and I'll go look up the link and I'll post it in the chat for everyone to look at. But Tyler and I have made a, a welcome packet that makes it really easy for you to get all the police resources you need to know when there's been crime in your neighborhood, resources you can hand out to your neighbors, to do home security checklists, the camera registration, the vacation watch that MPD offers when you go away. All kinds of things are on there. And then if you have more questions, I don't want to volunteer myself because we're getting bombarded right now. Poor Tyler is being pulled in 6 different directions. That's the crime prevention officer. And now whenever he gets a request from the neighborhoods, he's passing it along to me because no one else at MPD has time for it. I will do my best to answer anyone's questions if he happens to pass you along to me. But yeah, if more neighborhoods could set up a Good Neighbor Project and work together so that you know what's familiar, not familiar in your neighborhood, and so you can work together to pass along information when crimes happen so these rumors don't go flying wildly. It's a wonderful thing that neighbors can do. Of course, it's easier when there's not a pandemic, but we can still try and do the best that we can. So I'll post that link in the chat.
But Wendy, nothing's happening when we report the crimes. Nothing is happening. I've reported crimes twice now and nothing happens. Having videos and showing videos of people doing bad things, it doesn't change the behavior. We need to get to behavior change.
I absolutely agree with you. This is just one piece of the puzzle. The whole idea of a Good Neighbor Project is that you partner with the Madison Police. So for example, in my neighborhood, we know our neighborhood liaison officer, and when an incident happens in our neighborhood, we contact him and find out exactly what happened. And then we can share that information with the neighborhood so that they know. For example, right now, we have what we're sort of calling the rock bandit. There's somebody that's been throwing bricks and rocks through plate glass windows and doors and front windows to break into people's houses. Well, in working with our police officer, we found out that in every single instance of this, the people were gone on vacation, even now during the pandemic. So then we can offer them crime prevention tips specifically for if you're on vacation, to avoid something like that. We can ask him to follow up on things if we see stuff. So you sort of have somebody that you can go to, and every neighborhood has a liaison officer or has a neighborhood officer assigned to it that can be your partner in this so that you don't feel alone, if that helps.
I know Alder Skidmore wanted to say a few words, and then Mr. Cristoforo and Dave and Beth wanted to say something. Alder Skidmore?
Yeah, thanks much. I think this is a good time for me to speak. I've had a chance to listen and think a lot. When Alder McKinney wanted to have this meeting, she specifically wanted to talk about the violent crime. And what we're looking at is kind of at the end of a spectrum. We've been talking about a range of public safety issues and problems, and we're focusing on what's happening in the city, but we're also looking at agencies that we have no control over, and that's the county court system. And it's kind of, you know, even though there are some very significant problems, it's unfair to, you know, blame them for everything. Yes, juveniles are being allowed or being returned to the street primarily because there doesn't appear to be a reasonable alternative to doing something with them. Part of that's funding, and part of it's state controlled with the state prisons. I don't want to talk about that, but we're here to talk about, you know, the worst of the worst. We're talking about crimes that MPD, Madison Police Department, can have an impact on, but there have been problems. There's a variety of problems in this spectrum, and this is the very top of the spectrum, and we've watched it grow progressively worse through the years. I started as an alder 19 years ago, and it was much different then, and I've watched a real erosion. One of the things that I've seen is that there has been a real decrease in the number of officers available to work the shifts. I know some of my colleagues would argue with that, but in reality, we MPD and the city were able to build up a group of officers that were able to specialize and get out in the community. The community health officers, where are they now? The neighborhood officers, the neighborhood liaisons, the traffic enforcement safety team. That started to erode when our funding was being cut and new officers were not added, and by attrition, Chief Koval in particular started moving people from those specialties into patrol to keep the patrol numbers up. You can't argue that. You know, we talked about it for years and it's still happening. Now we're at a situation where there's just barely a remnant of what we used to have as proactive policing. There used to be a certain percentage of time that officers could spend interacting with the neighborhood. We also had a very effective ERO, Education Resource Officer, which morphed into school resource officers. Well, through political pressure that ended, and I don't think we have any idea of the problems that we're going to have once school is back in session, and there is no trained security, and I do use that appropriately in our public schools. When an incident occurs, the patrol officers will be called in, and they will come in to do their job, and that is to end the threat. It'll be much different than a SRO that knows the school and knows the nuances of the people and can affect changes. You know, there's a whole spectrum out there, and Leslie brought up some really good points about the middle portions, not the confrontational parts of security, but it's all part of security. What we're talking about here tonight is we have bad events occurring, and there will never be a situation in the city where we do not need a well-equipped and well-trained police force to end the threats. We're seeing threats, and we have officers now that are reluctant to engage individuals that are committing an insurrection. And I use that word appropriately. We have many protesters that are exercising a constitutional right to protest, but then we have others sometimes following behind or after to loot, to vandalize, to assault, to break out the windows. That's criminal activity. And we have not condemned that activity. And there is some doubt as to whether officers will be reprimanded for using tear gas or OC or the less than lethal methods. There are actually alders that are trying to prohibit that use. That's for a separate discussion, but this is part of the discussion we're having now, that we're having these violent acts, and We're having trouble stopping them because many of them know that they can continue. That is something that needs to be addressed and confronted. We need to be able to end these threats. That's why Captain Patton and Sergeant Messer are on the street right now, and Captain Friedman was in the command post last night, and Captain Patton going to be in the command post again tomorrow. It's, you know, it's never ending. We have a situation where, you know, we're on high alert for activity that is anticipated, not possible, but anticipated. So, you know, we have to address this whole issue. That's why we're here. That's why Barb McKinney wanted to talk about this end of the spectrum. So, you know, there's a lot of aspects of public safety. This is just one of them. And we need a holistic approach. I said it before, I'm not just gung-ho for having a militaristic police force. I would like a police force that's able to address the mental health issues and to address students and all aspects of it. And I'd like to be able to work cooperatively with the county, but that's not in the cards right now. So that's the hand that we're dealt, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. And we have a lot of discussion to do. So that's it for right now.
All right, Mr. Joseph Cristoforo.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to add something to my earlier comments, and it kind of came to mind when the gentleman earlier, I believe it was TJ, was speaking about behavioral change and how critical that is. When we were robbed last July 2019, there was a lot of discussion, and my wife and I did a lot of digging. And one of the things we found out through discussion and digging is that when these young criminals go to the juvenile detention center, the older, more experienced criminals, I guess as a formality or as a protocol, a lot of these young people are given what are called competency tests. And what's happening here is the older criminals have figured out how to fail the competency test. And they have passed that information on to the younger criminals. So now 12, 13-year-old criminals are failing these competency tests so that they can now be considered disabled. Once they're considered disabled, it's much more difficult for the judicial system to prosecute them or to punish them. It's just, somebody texted a little bit earlier, I believe it was Leslie, that this is the beginning of a life of crime. And she's right on. These behaviors just worsen over time. And I'm going to leave it at this, and I promise you I won't bore you anymore with my stories. But those of us who are old enough to remember the old TV show Beretta's tagline was, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. I think it's applicable now in Madison and with these young criminals that if they're going to do big boy crimes, they need to do some type of big boy time. And that's the answer. That's what's going to change the behavior. You can have all these social programs you want. Do you think these kids are going to these social programs? They're not. They've already decided this is their life. All right. And the only way you're going to change it is if there's some real punishment. That's my 2 cents. I appreciate all of your time. And thanks to all of you for participating, because I think everybody is kind of fighting the same battle or pulling the oars in the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have David Beth again, if you're available.
Yes, we're available. And actually, this is Beth this time. I have a few points I want to make, and then I have a final question that, so that's kind of the progress of how I'm going to talk here. First of all, we've lived in Madison for 28 years. To give you an idea of where we live, we're south of Raymond Road and north of McKee. So that's our neighborhood, and we've loved living here for all those years. We are concerned with escalating in crime, both the petty crimes, and then as that has progressed into becoming more and more violent. I appreciated the comment earlier. The neighborhood that we live in is a great neighborhood, but we do have higher numbers of crimes than some of the other neighborhoods. And I'm sorry to hear that the crime is reaching into other neighborhoods too. My point with that is it seems to be growing as we're all noticing, and it's increasing. However, I think that what we need to do, and this is a challenge to the alders, and maybe you guys are the best ones that can address this. It seems like we need a two-pronged attack to this in some way or shape or form. One is our police force is underfunded right now. It seems to me that it's obvious that we need more support, more bodies in the police force to help with the situations. And yet at the other spectrum, I don't think we can go forward without addressing some of the things that can support families and people of our community who might benefit from some of the things like help for mental health and how to change a situation that you may not know how you can change, whether, you know, it's what else to do besides criminal activity. So I guess I would urge the alders, we know that there's going to be shortage of funds across the board for everything due to the pandemic and the other things that have happened downtown and across the city. So alders, I think you're going to have your work cut out for you in how can we approach this as a two-pronged attack and fund it in two-pronged attacks, because as I understand it, and I don't mind being wrong about this, I wish I was, financially it's going to be tough to move forward. But I think a two-pronged attack is going to be the best way. I don't want to get into the defunding the police, but I think what the message for that is for me, it's we have to support people in a lot of different ways, We have to support our police officers, and I do think that they are underserved. I mean, not underserved, but don't have the resources they need. But it can't just be, as the officer was talking about, it can't just be the switch. It also has to be how can I be helped so that my life might have other options. So I think that the alders and the city council, as they make recommendations for funding, you're gonna have to look long and hard at where can we best support those two. Those are just comments. And the challenge, I think, that our city officials have. The question is, after this Zoom meeting, what happens next? You've heard our concerns. We have not all the same opinions, but what happens next so that we as citizens can support the changes that we would like to see? And I would like an answer to this question. What happens next after we have these meetings to move forward? So that's it. I'm out.
I can start off on aldermanic response. Hi, Dave and Beth. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. I would like to say that Alder McKinney was very instrumental in getting these meetings started, and I think they're a great idea. I think the fact that we were over capacity tonight speaks volumes about how important and how interested people are in it. We're going to go back. We alders are going to talk about what happened. We're going to debrief. One of the first things we're going to do is make sure that the next meeting that occurs, we won't have a limit and people will be able to participate more fully, and we're going to work out the bugs. And I apologize that we didn't quite get things set up right the first time, but we're delighted for people here, that people are here. This is an issue that is not going to go away, and it's an issue that we're going to keep talking about. Barb wants to have a meeting. Alder McKinney wants to have a meeting at least once a month. We had one 2 weeks ago. Now we have one. I would expect that within 2 weeks to a month, we're going to have another meeting. We're going to expand, come back with more information. I can also tell you that we, at our city council meeting this coming Tuesday, we're going to be talking about a variety of issues related to the police department. One of them is the potential for the police auditor and oversight committee. I believe we're also going to be voting on whether the city should not defund the police department, but whether we should restrict their ability to use less than lethal weapons, among other things. And in coming months, we're going to be talking about our city budget. And a large portion of that is how are we going to manage our budget deficit and what are we going to do with public safety? Those are all things that you can have an input into, and we're going to help you, find ways to be able to voice your opinion. This is one of them. So we're going to try and help better. I know Alder Hennick has arrived, and I'm hoping he'll be able to say a few words, but Christian is still here. Christian, maybe you want to weigh in on what do we do now?
Yeah, thank you, Alder Skidmore. Dave and Beth, I appreciate your comment. In terms of next steps for me, as an alder and representative of District 20, it's pretty simple. I mean, we've been having a lot of violent, unacceptable crimes happening in District 20, around District 20, and sort of in the general west side that is very concerning to me, to my neighbor, to residents of the district. And so I hear that and understand that. What I will continue to do is in my conversations with the mayor, saying that we need to be mindful of that in the budget that she presents to the council, be it an operating budget and a capital budget. And with that in mind, as colleague has already referred to, that I think us as alders will debrief on what happened here tonight. But again, I am going to continue to have conversations with the mayor's office and with MPD leadership. I've talked about the concept and idea of the fact that I feel like as a city, we haven't responded well overall to the violent issues across the city, just in general, as to what a new initiative is that we're going to do to address it. What is a game plan? We're going to do X, Y in response to A, B, and C. I feel like right now there is no clear message from the city as to what our game plan on that. And so I've shared that with other colleagues. I've shared that with the mayor's office. I've shared that with MPD leadership. And I've shared some ideas that I have regarding violence prevention or other, unique initiatives that we've seen across the country, whether it's a gun buyback program or alternative forms of conflict resolution amongst gangs or people that have tensions amongst themselves in the community. So I'll continue to have those conversations with other policymakers. But I think that it's going to be a really interesting and challenging budget that us alders and policymakers have to make changes to say, okay, what's the best foot forward for our city? And I think it's very clear that to have a thriving and healthy community, public safety is really a core pillar of that. So we got to ensure that we're properly giving what we need to support that at the city level. So thank you so much for your questions. And I know that we're running short on time, so I'll defer to my other colleague on the council as well to respond.
Can I quick ask a question? Can someone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hey, Paul or Christian or Zach, can you please tell everyone how important it may be, unless I have my information screwed up here, that the CCEC will be voting on 3 specific items. Is it either tomorrow or early next week? And everyone as a resident of Madison can actually go on the city's website and vote no for these 3 items, or alders are aware of how we wish them to vote. Is that correct, Paul or Christian or Zach? Can you explain to everyone a little bit more about that? I posted the website on this little, I don't know if it's getting to everyone. I did it in the little chat area here. Does that make sense?
Yep, I just also updated the chat as well. Thank you very much. So yeah, the 4 items that are coming up for the CCEC meeting, which is the Common Council Executive Committee, which Alder Skidmore, myself, and several other alders are on, which is basically the executive committee. So the president, vice president select that committee. And we will have the NACOL, the National Association, Alder Skidmore, do you remember if it's association or for civilian oversight?
Yeah, it's the National Association for the Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement.
Yep. Kwesi, can you talk a little bit about what they're going to be talking about tomorrow night?
Right. So we had alders work on a work group trying to create a civilian oversight body that's supposed to oversee an independent auditor that they're anticipating will be reviewing the work of the Madison Police Department. And we have some personnel who've been doing this kind of work on a national level. And so they're going to come and speak to the different models that exist. I believe Alders will be asking some questions about what this body will be doing or should be doing in the context of state statutes, where we have a police and fire commission that is the final arbitrator of any kind of hiring or discipline as it pertains to the police department. So again, we do have some Alders that are presumably trying to be responsive to the current climate and trying to create this civilian oversight body. It was, they're supposed to be implementing some of the recommendations that came out of the ad hoc group that was doing its work. So it's definitely engaged.
Kwesi, the biggest part I was just asking for was the NACOL and what they're tasked with and kind of what their background is, what they do on a national level.
Okay, so on the national level, what they do is they help facilitate trainings of civilian oversight bodies that kind of review with police. And so it's kind of hard to put it in context because different states have different rules that kind of guide civilian oversight of police departments, but they pretty much conduct trainings and work with municipalities that have civilian bodies that kind of oversee operations. That's pretty much the short part of it.
Thank you, Kwesi. So the 4 items that are coming to the CCEC and then tomorrow night, and then we'll come to the full council next week, Tuesday. There's 4 items. One is switching the auditor position, which was in the 2020 budget. So we passed that last fall. And that one, they're switching to a different comp group. So that's one of the piece of legislation. The other ordinance is creating the Office of the Independent Police Monitor. So originally it had started out as there was the Office of the Independent Monitor, and then there was the Civilian Oversight Board. And those, through this Alder work group of 3 individuals, Alder Moreland, Alder Kemble, and Alder Badar, they combine those into one. Instead of having one monitor, they have a monitor plus a data analyst plus an assistant. And then another one is creating the budget amendment because we had $200,000 just for the auditor position, and now they're switching that $200,000 to setting up the oversight board. And then next year it's saying that they're expecting to have, the budget would be $485,000 for this office. And the last one is accepting the final report of the Alder work group. Developing logistics and operational details for the Madison Police Department Independent Civilian Oversight. So it's an office, 3 employees, monitor board of civilian oversight. And I would encourage you to go to the agenda. I just put a link to the agenda. It'll take you, there's 2 links there. One is just to give comments on the items, and you can select which item you want to. I listed its items 4 through 7. If you read those items, then you can decide which one you want to comment on, or you can comment on all 4 of them. But I would encourage you to read through that and kind of make some of your own opinions and judgments on it. But I think there's some issues that I'll be bringing up tomorrow night at CCEC. So I just wanted to highlight there's a lot of attention around this. And I think at the Public Safety Review Board Committee meeting last night, it was very much a one-sided conversation. There were 91 people in support of those 4 pieces of legislation and 0 opposed. So it's, we can get together in this forum, but one thing that I'm not seeing is the things that I'm hearing here being transferred into the committee meetings and into the council meetings. And I think that Alders that are bringing up some of the things that we're hearing here and some of the different voices around the city, it's really hard to be talking about how often we're hearing these comments when people aren't showing up to meetings. And I know that it's hard. I understand that it's difficult, but there's a significant portion of the city that is showing up. And I don't think we're getting a balanced kind of conversation around it. And I'd really like to see that more balanced in our meetings and hear some of the different perspectives that I'm hearing around the city.
And so you're basically saying you're hearing from the majority of those that want to defund in the most kind of radical idea of that, the police, right? So this is a place where everybody seems to be on board here, that they support the police, we appreciate them, we value them, and we want to make sure that we do get on our websites and vote on this, because as I understand it, this group will be made up of committee members that are from Urban Triage, Freedom Inc., and the Community Response Team, which are all huge advocates to defund the police. Is that correct?
Those 3 organizations, yes, are part of the 9 organizations.
Right.
And one thing I would make sure is, I hear from a lot of people on this piece of legislation. There are very few people that have read through the whole thing. And in the United States, the people who do the background research and have good arguments, I find are the people that generally get listened to more. So I would really encourage you, when you comment on the meeting or when you come to the meeting, read the legislation. If you got questions on it, you got my cell phone number. I'll put it up on the chat. Give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help walk through. And if you have a hard time understanding any part of it or want some background, I'd love to talk to you about it.
That's pretty cool.
And you also said, though, at one point, isn't it a good thing for everybody to just vote no? You don't necessarily have to speak. You can just simply vote no.
Well, you can vote yes or no. I don't disagree with everything in the report. There's a lot of things in there that are great. So I'm not encouraging anybody to go on and just vote no. I am encouraging, but yes, as far as just what you can do, your options, when you go on there, you'll see the selection options. You can vote, say that you're supporting and available to speak, against and available to speak, support and you'd like to speak, or you'd like to register to speak on the item, or you can just say, I don't support the item, or I do support the item.
Real quick, we do have Alder Harrington McKinney, who's back on as well, if she would like to say something. And also, again, okay, I see you, Gary. If you do want to speak, just hit the participants and do the raise hand option, and I'll be able to see you and highlight you. But I see you on my screen right now, Gary, so I will unmute you.
I was just typing something into the chat. Thank you very much, because this is a great time to come in. Alder Hennick was absolutely right, is that we don't need to, so read the proposed legislation, read it, because when you read it, you are more versed upon it and you will have questions, rather than we're not going to cut and paste and just say we're against it. That's valid, but you need to read it for yourself and see how comfortable you are with it and the questions that you have related to it. If you read it, you're going to come up with questions because you are a citizen. And that's one of the things that we are missing, is that we're not hearing the community of voices, because if legislation passes, then that means you as a taxpayer, as a citizen, as a resident, then are responsible for it as well. And so my ask, and I came in at a very good time, is that please read the 4 items that will be before us on Friday and will be voted on Tuesday. Sign in to be a speaker. You can register to speak. And then when it gets to your name, you can decide whether you want to speak or not. But you must be registered in order to be recognized. It is so important. I mean, we are at a critical place, and I know that I missed most of the conversation because we were at capacity, but we so need your voices so very, very much. And thank you, Alder, for bringing that up.
Gary, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah, I'm Gary. I am a 50-year resident of my home here in Madison at the western end of Barton Road. And so, in that 50 years previous, I've never once thought about moving. It's how much I've liked Madison. But I feel threatened now. You know, my kids don't want to come over that live around Wisconsin here because they don't feel safe. My grandkids, they won't allow here. It's serious. And it scares me when I hear people talking about defunding or decreasing the police budget. I wonder, these meetings that are mentioned, if they're in person, has anybody ever thought about the fact that they discriminate? Because, for example, at my age, my doctor has said I need to isolate. Both my wife and I would be dangerous because of COVID. And my doctor said if you get it, it's pretty much almost a death sentence. So I think people have to understand that the city council needs to do a better job of communicating how people can get their opinions recognized. I, have emailed a few alders, but I know they're busy, but no responses. So again, I think the city council has to do more to get more people's opinion. Meetings like this, I think, show that that message is not getting out to all the citizens of Madison, just those that have an axe to grind. Thank you.
Gary, thank you for those responses. So our council meetings are all done virtually now. And you can actually access them during the pandemic in a safe manner that will not put your health at risk or anybody else who has underlying conditions, or just virtually anybody who's a very healthy body as well. So yes, our meetings are all done virtually. Kwesi, I don't know if you're able to, if there's a general link that you can add in here for folks to know how to get access to upcoming meetings, maybe the meetings page.
Yeah, I can post a link from the clerk's office, which is actually pretty similar to what Alder Hennick posted. I will do that right now.
So just to jump in here, I just in the chat, I also just posted a link to the My Account registration. So one thing that I think is one of the best kept secrets, and I've been trying to push it out to my district, is My Account. So City of Madison, My Account, you go to that link. I went all the way to the registration page, and you sign up for the account, and it basically just gives you the ability to sign up for city newsletters. And I sign up to all of them, and then once you start getting them, decide which ones you don't want or do want, and just unsubscribe to the ones you don't want. But there are probably 100 of them, different, whether it's special projects that are going on, the streets department, the police department, all different city departments and agencies and things that are going on in the city that have these listservs, and they send out emails to them. That's where I get an amazing amount of my information, is just by signing up for all these listservs. And then you can stay up to date on some of these things and see what's going on. But it's a really easy way. When you look at Alder pages, a significant amount of the information that comes out on Alder pages is just basically a pass-through of getting stuff from these listservs and then sending them out to residents. But you as residents have the ability to sign up for any of those that you would like to. And I would highly encourage it. I'm also going to send out a link to, as Kwesi was talking about, for the best way to look at the city's weekly meeting schedule, because you can just check that at the beginning of the week. You can see all the agendas of any of the meetings things are coming up on. And it's just a great way to keep an eye on things during the week. That right now it's super easy, because all you have to do is click watch the meeting, and you can throw an earbud in and watch and listen to it on your phone and hear exactly what's going on. And it's a great way to stay tuned in. So I'll throw that up on the chat as well.
Alder Skidmore, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks much. We're getting close to 8 o'clock here, and I'm very grateful that Alder McKinney's back on. We were talking, Alder, about next steps, and I think this is a perfect timing. Thank you, Alder Albaris and Alder Anik, for the comments about how to stay connected. I think that's something that we as a group need to do, is to keep people better informed as to how to be able to participate. That's a question I hadn't really thought about, kind of being in the weeds, so to speak, of being in the political system on how to stay connected. But Alder McKinney, we were talking about what's happening next. You're hearing some of that now, and I think this would be a good time to have a short discussion of what is our next meeting? When will it be? Will it be 2 weeks from now? Will it be a month from now? And who's going to host it?
Okay, thank you, Alder. One of the things that that's really important is that we start collaborating. This meeting was for West District Alders, not District 1, not District 20. It was West District Alders, and you got the breadth of information. What we have decided as West District Alders is that we rotate hosting to give all alders an opportunity. Sorry about that. To give all the alders an opportunity to host one of these Zoom meetings. And we made the decision two weeks ago to have it every 2 weeks. And so either Alder Aboris or Alder Hennick will host the next minute. Alder Aboris, are you able to host the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to hosting the next meeting, or if another colleague wants to. I think we definitely have to work with city staff to identify a larger capacity for sure.
Well, the challenge is that I have my own account, and so we ran into the snags because I did not realize that we were using the city account. I have my own personal account, and we need to make sure that we enlarge that, because very quickly at 6:10, I think we had over 100 people. And if we're going to continue to build these relationships, we need to have a platform where individuals can sign on. I received quite a number of emails of constituents who were frustrated. And I said, well, I'm on the outside as well. I can't get in. And so we will plan for that. And so that the next Zoom meeting, we will have a broader, larger scale of the ability for constituents to log in. But hosting it will be the next alder that would step up and host the next one, and we would hope it would be within 2 weeks.
That sounds good to me. Having reached about a point here, are there any more questions that you want to ask, or any suggestions for another topic, or anything else anybody wants to add, be it Captain Friedman, Lieutenant Patterson, or any of the alders, or any of the participants?
I've just got a quick comment. There's a lot of communication, and this is just something I try and tell people whenever people are trying to communicate with alders. If you want a response from an alder, I highly recommend you send that email to the alder, to their email address. If you want to make a comment to the whole council, or you want something that's basically a blanket statement, send it to the all alders address. But lots of email gets received through all alders, and so it's a much more difficult venue to have a back and forth or get a response from. If you want a response, send it to the person that you want a response from. And if that's all alders, if that's everybody, then send an email directly to each of the individuals.
Well, as the host of this meeting, I want to thank you all for participating. This is more people than I expected, and I'm very grateful that you were here to share your opinions and ask questions. And I want to thank the staff that were here, Captain Friedman, Lieutenant Patterson. I'm sorry that Captain Patton could not be with us, but I'll be calling him tonight. He asked for an update, and I want to thank Kwesi for doing a great job of coordinating this. I appreciate it greatly. Thanks for the help, and thanks for Barb for setting this whole series of programs up. Thank you all. And unless there's any other comments, I'm going to say we can shut this down.
Let's get more real quick. I just, again, want to apologize for the technical difficulties we had with being at capacity. IT has informed me that they're going to move us to an enterprise license. So I'm hoping that in the near future, when we have another one of these meetings, we'll be able to accommodate a whole lot more of you. So again, I sincerely apologize for those who weren't able to get on and participate in this conversation, but thank you all for being here.